Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Laura, and I'm head of marketing here at Build Empire, which is a Total partner, aka an LMS provider. But today is not about us; it's about the most important L&D trends, as you can see on the screen, that we believe are going to shape 2026. Now, I want today to be as interactive as possible. These trends have come from some of our own internal leaders, their thoughts based on customers they speak to and industry trends, as well as our own research into what the data is saying, is going to be a key focus for the upcoming year. But I would love to hear your thoughts as we go along too. So, what do you think is or isn't going to be a major trend, and what extras would you potentially throw into the ring as being a big player in 2026? Now, you might be thinking 2026 trends, isn't that just going to be AI over and over again? And you're not wrong, but you're certainly not right either. To be honest, as a marketer, AI does get a bit boring to talk about. So while some of the key trends absolutely will involve AI, not all of them are going to be AI specific. In fact, the resounding message for this year is that it's going to be the year that learning becomes more human, ironically. And that's not all. It's the year learning becomes more embedded, more community driven, and more aligned to real work than ever before. I'm going to talk about all that in a moment, but first, a bit of housekeeping. So we are live here on LinkedIn. So hello from my Liverpool living room. Let me know where you're calling in from. But if you are watching this on YouTube, then we are not live. So we'll just be sharing this on there after. So you've got it to watch back very easily. Please do feel free to leave a comment or ask a question, no matter what platform you are watching from. And one of our team or even one of the other viewers, maybe even myself, will get back to you. And hopefully that intro has given you enough time to grab a drink and get settled into watching. So let's get into it. The first thing I want to do before we get into what we think the trends are is to ask you directly in the chat, what is one of your biggest challenges right now? Is it skills gaps? Is it engagement? Is it having too much content and not enough impact? Is it technology? Is it leaders that don't lead? Or is it something else entirely? We've got a few key challenges listed in a blog that our COO Michael wrote recently that I'm just going to quickly skim through. And it includes challenges like tight budgets, learner engagement, measuring ROI, high turnover, etc. You can see the rest of them on the screen, and you can see there's quite a few there. The ones that they are ones that have been on our radar for quite a while. Now, I know you're probably thinking, Laura, this webinar is about trends. Why are you talking about challenges? But the truth is, they are intrinsically linked. In an effort to solve some of the biggest challenges that L&Ders face, we often find ourselves creating something new that then becomes a bit of a trending topic. A really good example of that is gamification, which is basically a solution to learner engagement. Anyway, let's get into it and keep those challenges in mind as we go through what we think is going to trend. So we're going to start off with our first trend, which is around skills gaps. Now, on the topic of challenges, this is a very familiar one. If you've been following our 2025 trends, you'll know that skills gap dominated the conversation. And the truth be told, 2026, they are not going anywhere, but the story is going to shift. So, Skillsoft's 2025 survey found that only 10% of HR and L&D professionals believe that their workforce has the right skills for the coming year. Not very reassuring. And the gaps are exactly where you would expect them to be: AI, leadership, and technical skills. So far, nothing new, but here's where 2026 gets interesting. In the L&D community, we are often talking about learning in the flow of work. And to do that, we've built things like microlearning, just-in-time learning. But the question for 2026 is, how can we take that even further? Well, one way to integrate learning directly into the platforms, one way is to integrate learning directly into the platforms that you're using. And doing that means that you don't have to switch tabs, hunt through an LMS, or go on a bit of a content safari. Let's use an example to imagine it. So imagine a salesperson is in their CRM. They're quoting for a product that they haven't sold before and they're not really sure what they're doing. So rather than guessing or having to search, they see a tiny prompt which asks them, do you need any help with this? They click it and a 90-second micro lesson appears. That is the future of learning. And hopefully in 2026, we will see many more tangible steps to solving skill gaps in the moment. Obviously, we've got a very happy salesperson there. So fingers crossed that we can start to implement that one. Um, our second trend is around metrics. So it's all around tracking outcomes and not activities. So for years, L&D has kind of been obsessed with the same sort of data, things like courses enrolled, courses completed, hours of learning, badges, and that kind of stuff. And now I'm going to say something that many of you already know. This data tells us absolutely nothing about impact. So for 2026, we want the focus to shift to what changed because of your learning. And that means measuring things like reduced errors, better decisions, faster onboarding, fewer support tickets, stronger customer interactions, and improved capability. So again, let's use an example. Let's say a Totra partner LMS notices a huge spike in support tickets, and they're all tied to common stumbling blocks, tongue twister. To help, they referred their users to courses within the Totra community, and they are courses that address those exact issues. But they don't just share it with their current users, they also share it with new customers too. So they're basically preempting any issues. 3 months down the line, they find that support tickets have dropped significantly. That is outcomes-based L&D. It's not, oh, this many people finished a course. It's here's what improved because they did the course. So I'm curious to know, what is one outcome you wish you could measure, but you haven't worked out how to yet? Moving on to our third trend. We're whizzing through these already, actually. This is focusing on journeys, not catalogs. So L&D loves content. We create it, we upload it, we categorize it, and then we expect learners to just find it. The truth is that catalogs are overflowing, and while filters exist, they don't actually solve the root issue. As Nate, our CPO, said perfectly, our users' main priority is easy access to learning. So, what does easy access look like, and how can we put user journeys ahead of endless catalog scrolling? One easy way to change how your users use your LMS platform, and that's to give them access to things they need and want right where they are. Instead of waiting for them to find their next course or letting them struggle to find one they're already signed up for, you can add blocks to your key dashboard. So here's a few examples of cool blocks that I quite like in our platform that can help build journeys. So the first one is the My Courses block, which is up on the screen. So I always relate this back to like Netflix. If you log in, you'll find a section called My List, and that's essentially all the titles that you've chosen to add to come back to at a later date. And this is very similar. The My Courses block allows learners to automatically add courses to a section on their homepage dashboard. It basically collates all the courses they're enrolled in, and it'll show their progression as well as completion dates. So that's a really cool one. The next one is next activity block. So, you might find that you start a piece of content and then you need to log out at the end of the day. You haven't quite finished, so you come back the following day to finish it off, and you've got to troll through the catalogue to find it. Not exactly easy user experience. Instead, with the next activity block, you can push the last accessed piece of content right to the top of your learner's homepage. The next one is a recommended activities block. So you might have had it where you've engaged in a piece of content and you just want more of the same. You could find, a new interest from a particular piece of content that you've engaged in and just want more of it. So, as an L&D provider, why would you not want to do that? With this custom block, you can add related and recommended content to the user in a really easy to read format. Our next trend is around community learning. So we know full well that learning is social, and the L&D community has been really focused on social learning as a concept. That is, learning through interaction, collaboration, and shared experiences. Platforms like LinkedIn Learning, Slack, and even cohort-based courses have really proved that learning doesn't happen in isolation. It actually thrives in conversation and collaboration. But as we head into 2026, this trend is now evolving. We're entering the era of community-led learning, where the community itself drives the agenda, content, and learning pathways. So instead of just experts and organizations dictating what people should learn, communities are becoming co-creators of knowledge. And that shift is fueled by a few key forces. The first is decentralized expertise. So in every niche, practitioners and enthusiasts are sharing first-hand insights that outpace traditional curriculum and frankly have a lot more impact. The next one is, just an innate trust in peers over institutions. Learners increasingly value real world experience and collective wisdom over top down instruction. And the last one is technology that empowers collaboration. Tools for live discussions, sharing materials and peer recognition. They make it really easy for groups to self organize and sustain learning ecosystems. And that's obviously a win win for us because it means your community is really active, and it means that a lot of the activity isn't having to come from you. So community learning can take all the best parts of social learning and add to it. So it's definitely well worth looking at in 2026. Our next one is, it's time. We're going to have to talk about artificial intelligence. We managed to get through a fair few trends before we mentioned it, but as you know, AI isn't slowing down, it's actually leveling up. And while AI hasn't really gotten to grips with it fully yet, as far as we can see, things are slowly moving along. So, one key prediction we have is AI agents. They can help business leaders understand their learner goals, they can track progress across tools, they can adapt learning paths in real time, and so much more that you can see on the screen. Um, the reason for moving away from traditional chatbots, well, unlike traditional ones, AI agents are dynamic and they are context aware. They don't just deliver information, they understand a learner's goals, they can track progress across different tools, and they could even adapt learning paths in real time. So imagine a learning companion that knows your role, can recall what you've mastered, can suggest relevant discussions in your internal community, and can prompt you to apply new knowledge in live projects. For L&D teams, that represents a new layer of scalability and personalization, and they could really help bridge the gap between structured learning programs and more informal day-to-day learning moments. So we do have a bit of a way to go from what I've seen of chatbots, but before we get to that, it's definitely making moves. Um, Talking about skills again. So for years, skills were definitely the holy grail. Skills taxonomies were huge, skills clouds, and skills first hiring. But now the hype has definitely cooled and reality has set in. But why the shift? Well, Michael, who is our COO here at Build Empire, put it plainly. Building a skills based ecosystem is really hard. It needs clean data, it needs consistency, it needs a lot of time, and most teams don't have the capacity. Even the language is evolving. Platforms like Totra themselves have shifted from using competencies to skills, which signals a mindset change. But the real shift will only happen when skills stop being like a standalone initiative and start being woven into everyday workflows. For now, many organizations are taking a skills light approach, so using skills data to inform learning paths or nudge development conversations rather than trying to overhaul their entire people structure, infrastructure overnight. The next phase will be less about taxonomy building and more about utility, which will make skills data useful in the moment. So for the manager who's coaching, the learner who's exploring, or the system that's recommending next steps. In 2026, the success won't belong to the organizations with the biggest skills map, but those who can make skills intelligence really simple, really visible, and super actionable. Moving on to our seventh trend already. So this is talking about being mobile ready, particularly for frontline workers. So for all the talk that we have about digital transformation, many frontline and deskless workers are still left behind when it comes to learning. In sectors like, retail or logistics, healthcare, and even manufacturing, employees are often expected to figure out on the job. But the issue is that they often have limited access to training tools that actually fit in the flow of their work. And the result means uneven performance, inconsistent experiences, and often really avoidable errors. But what does mobile ready actually mean? Well, we have LMS apps, they've existed for a while, but mobile friendly learning isn't just about pulling all of your learning content onto a mobile device. That obviously is a start, but it's about short micro courses. It could be like quick videos or QR coded instructions. It could be checklists that are in situ that then link to further learning. Instant microguides and embedded learning basically in the flow of work, which we've already talked about. So let's look at an example of it again in action. We've got a healthcare worker here who is using a piece of equipment that they've used before, but not for a while. They get an error message and they're not sure what it means. They see a QR code posted on the piece of equipment, which takes them to a quick refresher video. That is frontline enablement. So I'm curious to know, for those of you in the audience, what frontline task in your organization most urgently needs a mobile ready solution. Moving on to trend number 8, we've got the role of role play in learning. Learning doesn't always have to be done by watching or reading. It can also be done through role play. So in 2026, that principle is really going to be reimagined through digital role play, which is going to be technology driven simulations that will let people safely practice high stake conversations, decision making, problem solving before they ever have to deal with them in real life, which is obviously the scary part. It can enable a huge range of powerful things, like practicing difficult conversations, handling customer complaints, navigating ethical dilemmas, making decisions, as we said, building empathy, and improving psychological safety. Um, Role play is really powerful. It builds readiness, not just knowledge. And then when people go into a real life situation, they don't freeze because people have already had 20 digital practices and repetitions of a situation. So for L&D leaders, that means rethinking content creation. Instead of static modules, the future of learning design looks more like scenario architecture. So building branching storylines, dialogue flows, maybe even AI personas that can reflect the nuances of real work. When people can rehearse before it matters, learning becomes stickier, safer, and much more human. Um, Moving on to our ninth trend, which is our last trend actually, which is a refocus on leadership. So if there's one thing that every L&D leader agrees on heading into 2026, it's this. Leadership is the linchpin of performance. A modern manager isn't just a tax supervisor, they're the frontline enabler for growth. So that's our ChatGPT image there. So as learning becomes community driven, AI supported and more within the flow of work, leadership development becomes more essential to glue it all together. Modern L&D teams are moving away from bulky leadership programs and towards micro interventions like short scripts, 10-minute prompts for those one-to-ones that managers have, simple review loops that are tied to real work, bringing that thing back from learning to development. Nudges built right into the tools that managers are already using. And then the last one, which actually isn't on the screen, but the most important is metrics that track behaviors, not just completions, which goes back to one of our earlier trends. So all very important. When you zoom out from all of that we discussed today, every trend kind of shares a similar theme. Learning is going to be about meeting people where they are in the flow of work, in community, on mobile, and it's going to be supported by smart, ethical AI and led by managers who can help learning stick. That's how learning becomes, not just a function, but an engine for capability and culture, which feels like an ongoing quest in the industry, but it's something that I feel like we're getting closer and closer to. So 2026 is very much shaping up to be a year where L&D moves from theoretical initiatives to practical human-centered action. So I feel like we've moved away from we have to have gamification and we have to have AI and we have to have role playing to what's actually going to turn the needle, what's actually going to make this move. But that's everything for trends. But before we wrap up, I did just have two quick questions. The first one is, what trends did you agree with? What ones are you nodding along to, saying, yeah, absolutely see that one becoming more and more important? And what ones do you think we missed? What trends do you think are going to be coming up in the next year that we haven't covered today? I would love to hear your thoughts. But for today, that is a wrap on our L&D Trends webinar. Obviously, get your answers to those questions in the comments. I would love to read them. And make sure you follow us to keep updated with other L&D industry webinars and content, as well as lots of exciting product releases, as well as Toach tips. We post very regularly on LinkedIn, and you can also sign up for our newsletter, which comes monthly and offers loads of behind-the-scene info about us. As a reminder, we are Build Empire. We are a platinum partner of Totra that supports customers like Montessori, Astutis, BPP University, and MBL to create better learning platforms and better learning experiences too. As always, you can find out more about us via our website, which is www.buildempire.co.uk. But I'll leave it there and I will see you on the next one. Thank you so much.